Good afternoon, Louisiana. Welcome back to bet.nola.com and the Fantasy Roundup here on Tuesday, August the 9th. Zach Ewing along with Spencer, the Guru Urquhart, who is back for another week of dropping some fantasy football knowledge on all of your heads. Fantasy baseball, too, for that matter.
Yep, so got baseball going on.
That's right, and it's getting to the brass tack season for fantasy baseball. Playoffs starting here probably 3 or 4 weeks down the road, so you got to secure that playoff spot and make sure your roster's in line for the playoffs. So we'll talk some baseball later in the show, but as usual, football will take the front seat, and we'll talk some more draft strategy. And today we're going to focus in on a couple of categories. One is rookies, and one is guys who have changed places, Spencer, guys who, Tyreek Hill, I think, is the poster child for that this year, who were very super productive in one place and have moved somewhere else. And then the opposite of that, maybe weren't as productive in one place, but could become that in their new homes.
Yeah, Devonte Adams, another one, A.J. Brown, Hollywood Brown, a bunch of big names, especially at the wide receiver position. Heck, even Russell Wilson. So, yeah, definitely an unprecedented amount of movement this offseason. And then, of course, in a pretty exciting rookie class, probably won't have another Jamar Chase, but still a lot of big names to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. So that's what we will get to over the next half an hour or so. Reminder first off the bat, we are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. Go to NOLA.com/Caesars today and collect a $1,500 risk-free bet on us. Use promo code NOLA15. Or if you go to NOLA.com/Caesars, that promo code will be automatically loaded in there. It's for first-time users only, but we encourage you to sign up if you haven't done so already. And if you're just a fantasy fan and not really a sports bettor at this point, one show that we're going to do later this month, Spencer, for sure, is how your fantasy football knowledge and passion can make you a winner in the prop bet world, because that really ties directly into it. Is if you understand which players match up well against which teams, or which are even season long are going to have good seasons, you can make some money in the prop bet world.
Yeah, it could be our next show, maybe, talking about the season-long prop bets. I haven't really gone through them yet too much, but definitely going to have to start doing that because, it's getting close. I was like a month away now, so, it's time to start breaking down those props and seeing where the values are at.
That's right. The NFL season starts 30 days from today with the Bills and the Rams on that Thursday night, and then everybody else gets going on that Sunday, September the 11th. Hello, Jerry. How are you this afternoon? We're happy to have you back, and we're talking some fantasy football. Spencer is here. Let's get into some rookies, Spencer. We've talked about this a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but for those who have missed it, or now that we have a little more knowledge, a couple of weeks worth of how these guys looked in training camp, let's take a look at some of the rookies. I got one particular bone to pick with you on these lists, and we'll get there. I think you may know who it is.
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah.
But first, we're going to get to the guys who you think are in line for good rookie seasons. Like you said, maybe not Jamar Chase from last year, but certainly somebody that you're going to want to have an idea of drafting.
Right. Yeah, not too high on the receivers in this class. I think a lot of receivers are going to go through growing pains, which is why I have mainly running backs on this list. I feel like the top two backs, Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, should both produce as rookies, being that they have an easy path to carries in their backfields. Neither offense is that great, but they should see enough volume to produce fairly consistently. Hall I really like because he can also catch passes. Walker probably more of an early down bruiser and has to get past Rashad Penny, but we all know Penny's injury history. And then James Cook, really intriguing. Man, Steve yesterday on the Bayou Vet show made me feel even better about James Cook. He was somebody I was somewhat high on, but I was a little skeptical because with Singletary and all in the committee there. But Steve seemed to think Cook was going to really produce, especially in the second half. So he's somebody like him, Dameon Pierce, Algiers, Amir White, are these guys that they might not produce right out the gate, but they're good guys to stash because they could potentially have a path to work at some point in the year. And then Olave and Drake London, I feel, are by far the top two rookie wideouts. And then Jalen Tolbert, I like, and Alec Pierce is late round flyer types because they both have pass to targets in their offenses. The Colts have a thin receiving core, and so do the Cowboys at this point. Outside of CD Lamb, not a whole lot of trustworthy options there.
Yeah, so lots of.
Nope. There's Zach. I think, I think Zach may have froze up there, but yeah, definitely, definitely a lot of intrigue. You back?
I think I'm back. Can you
All
hear
right,
me?
cool. Yeah, you're good.
I never
now.
know when this thing is going to freeze up on me. It seems to happen at the beginning of shows, and then I'm fine after that. No, I think if you're going to if you're in a dynasty type situation, you're going to draft most of these rookies. If not, where do you draw the line as far as guys? Let's say in a standard 12-team league, are you drafting all of these guys in a 15-round draft, or is there a cutoff somewhere where you'd be willing to leave some on the wire?
Yeah, I'm drafting most of them. Tolbert might be the cutoff. Pearson's Amir White are kind of borderline as if I'd take them in redraft. But I probably still would, at a late pick. Where all the other ones I feel like should have enough of a path to work fairly early on in the season. Where I would draft all the other ones. Although Algier he might be getting the stock down. He's so far not really moving up the depth chart as quickly as some were thinking. Although I think that might just be something you can't always trust those depth charts. So I'm not panicking there.
No doubt about it. Sometimes those NFL depth charts in the preseason are put together by the PR staff, and they watch the team. I'm not saying they have no idea, but they certainly don't. It's not like the head coach is giving them the depth chart, and that's the gospel. So,
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. And by the way, before we get to the rookies that you are avoiding, I think we should clarify these lists. The first list is rookies you like. The second list is rookies you don't like. That does not mean that you will have every single one of those rookies you like on all of your rosters. It does not mean that from this list to come that you will have none of those guys on your rosters. It simply means you like them better or worse than what the consensus is.
Correct. Yeah, which I know for the next list is a guy that we're pretty high on last show, and it's somebody that I'm just not quite as high on as the consensus, because I think a lot of people are penciling him in to be AJ Brown, but I don't think he's going to quite get there.
I don't know that he has to be AJ Brown to be a worthwhile pick, but we're talking about Treylon Burks.
Yeah,
and I have to admit I was a little hurt when I saw this list and put together this slide that the number one rookie you're avoiding is my man Treylon Burks. And believe me, I'm not an Arkansas fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I love what the guy did at Arkansas. I think that he could be extremely dynamic as a rookie. And I think probably more than that, he's got some opportunity in Tennessee with A.J. Brown gone to get a lot of targets. And so that's my argument for Treylon Burks. What is your argument against him? Why you're fading him compared to the public?
Yeah, I'm not really feeling him because it's not really a talent thing. It's more it's the system. I don't really like the fit in Tennessee as a rookie. Mike Vrabel, he comes from Bill Belichick's deal to where they're tough on rookies. Rookies generally don't produce there. AJ Brown, it took him until the second half to really break out. So Burks is somebody that I feel like should be going a little later than he is, because if you take him up in one of those mid-round picks, is like your flex, and if he's not producing in the first half, that's going to sting. I noticed that a lot of times with rookies. Even Olave, as much as I love Chris Olave, like I try not to pull him up like higher than like the 8th round, because I feel like if I reach on him, then it's gonna, it might sting a little bit in that flex spot, where I notice Burks usually goes even higher than Olave. And so far, the reports out of camper that Robert Woods is set to be the number one. And right now, Burks is working with the second team offense. I don't think that'll last for long, but it's a little concerning to where he's not like blowing up as quickly as many were thinking. So it's just one of those things. It's not a talent issue. It's just more of an issue of it just. You said about the situation, I'm honestly not a big fan of the situation, because Tennessee is just they're kind of an old school kind of team. They're run first, tough nose head coach with Vrabel. So I'm not really feeling it from that perspective, but we'll see.
No, that's fair. I think there are better situations he could have gone to as far as scheme. But I do think outside of Robert Woods, there really is not a proven receiver on that roster. And so if he does play well, he is going to get quite a few targets because, somebody's got to get them. Somebody will get them in that offense. Derrick Henry's not really a pass catching back. Their tight ends, Austin Hooper, I think, is their tight end. Is that right?
Yeah, they brought Hooper in. Yeah,
and so that's he's got some experience certainly, but you look at their wide receivers and it's not a pretty depth chart. And so I think there's an opportunity for Treylon Burks from that regard. How about some of these other guys? These are high draft picks: Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, the next two on your list that you are fading.
Right. Yeah, definitely fading Jameson because was reading the reports. It's not looking too good as far as him being available early on. It's the realistic timeline's looking more like he's going to miss probably the whole first half. Probably won't be back till some point in November. And I mean, he's such a big name, such a polarizing, explosive receiver to where it's tempting to pull him up in the 9th or 10th round. Like, I'll just stash him on IR. But I mean, unless he falls like way late, like the 12th, 13th, I mean, I'm not touching him because I mean, what if I lose another key player that I need to put on that IR spot? Unless your league has like a bunch, like 4 or 5 IR spots or something like something crazy like that. Most leagues only have 1 or 2. So if you're in one of those, I just don't really see the point with Jameson because even when he comes back, I don't see him producing at a high level with Jared Goff as his QB. And then Wilson, I just feel like the Jets aren't quite there yet. Zach Wilson's getting better, but he's still not that great. He's not a high volume passer. And Elijah Moore seems to be his go-to guy. Moore's been tearing it up in camp, and Garrett Wilson, well, it hadn't been a bad camp. He's just, I don't see him being that number one, like his draft capital is like, oh, he's going to be the number one. But I think Moore holds down that role, at least for this season.
Yeah. I think there's certainly risk involved with any rookie. Those guys are higher draft picks, but you're right with Jameson Williams. It could turn into a Michael Thomas situation last year where you think you're getting him back at a certain point and you don't. And his ceiling, quite frankly, is not nearly as high as what Michael Thomas was. So at least there was a reason to take that chance last year. Now I don't know about that. How about some of these other names on the list? The one QB we see, Kenny Pickett, probably not starting the season as the Steelers starter. Mitch Trubisky will get that nod. We don't know if he will ever be the starter. I mean, that's one thing we don't know. A couple other names that caught my eye, Spencer. Isaiah Spiller of the Chargers has been getting some publicity out of camp as sort of the number 2 to Austin Eckler and a good handcuff. And then Ty Davis-Price, the LSU grad in San Francisco, but obviously a crowded running back room there as well.
Right. Yeah, these guys, I don't see them having quite as good of a path to volume as those other guys on the ones I like, like Pierce, Algier, being that their backfield stinks. So, I mean, they've got opportunity where the Chargers, Eckler's the guy there unless something happens to Eckler. Spiller's just going to be left fighting for scraps. I don't see the hype around Spiller. He's been getting pushed up to like the 7th or 8th round, and I'm not touching it. Same thing with Rachaad White. I was a little higher on White, but now that Leonard Fournette's back in shape, I mean, that's Tom Brady's led team. I mean, they're not going to want to use a rookie all that much, I don't think, unless White really picks up the playbook quickly. And Fournette's a guy Brady trusts, especially in the pass protection department. And then Davis-Price is just that 49er backfield. We know the drill. Kyle Shanahan, it's a committee backfield. Elijah Mitchell's the lead guy for now. And then you got Jeff Wilson there too. Maybe Trey Sermon. I doubt Trey Sermon. I think Davis-Price will beat out Trey Sermon, but I don't even know if he'll beat out Jeff Wilson, though. And I definitely don't see him beating out Elijah Mitchell, considering how well Mitchell did. So I don't know. And Davis-Price didn't really impress me all that much with LSU. I mean, he had the big game against Florida, but outside of that, I don't know. I don't see him being that great at the pro level. But again, we'll see.
Yeah, a couple of guys I want to ask you about who are not on either one of these lists. And so I guess that means you're sort of lukewarm on them or not sure what to think. But there are 4 guys who are getting big bets at Caesar Sportsbook for Offensive Rookie of the Year. 3 of them are wide receivers. One's Kenny Pickett, which makes sense why he would, just because a quarterback is going to win that award if he gets the opportunity and is productive, right? So, okay, Kenny Pickett's getting big bets. The other 3, maybe a little more interesting. Christian Watson of the Packers, Jalen Tolbert of the Cowboys, who you did have on your list, And then the last one is Romeo Doubs of the Packers. What do you think of
Yeah,
Watson and Doubs in Green Bay?
yeah. Was it Doubs or Dubs? I've heard it
Good
Dubs.
question. If
Yeah.
you draft him high enough, you'll get a big dub. But I've been saying Doubs, so I guess we got to wait and find out.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, Watson and I guess I was like Dubs. They're very polarizing in that, if either one can break out and be Aaron Rodgers' go-to guy, then yeah, they're gonna be steals, which is kind of why I didn't really include them on either list, because I'm not saying to avoid them, because I mean they've a lot of untapped potential there, but I'm also not necessarily targeting them because I was high on Watson. But now Watson's been hurt. He hadn't been able to get the reps. And then Dubs is now stealing the spotlight over there. He's the one that's been getting the reps with Rodgers, getting a lot of praise from the man himself. Rodgers been on record saying that he feels Dubs is going to make a huge impact as a rookie. So I'm kind of torn. It's like part of me is like, man, I still think Watson, he's so talented. He's a great field stretcher. But the deeper you get into camp and the more time he misses, that gives Dubs more and more chances to make an impression on Rodgers. And we all know how Rodgers is. You got to be comfortable. Well, he's got to be comfortable working with you as a receiver. If he doesn't trust you, he's not going to target you. So if he continues to build that trust with Dubs, it's probably going more to that side. I'm not completely off of Watson yet, but for redrafts, I'm starting to lean toward Romeo.
Okay, so maybe we do just call him Romeo, because I've been doing some crackpot Google research while you were talking. Nevada Sportsnet says the initial conversation was whether it was Dubs or Doubs, and Dubs won out. But just this summer, an interview has come out. Apparently, he's kind of camera shy, doesn't do a lot of interviews. He says it's pronounced Dobbs. That Dubs is also
Okay,
incorrect.
so we were both wrong. So it's Dobbs.
I guess we'll go with Dobbs if that's the latest information until we hear better. But maybe Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo, may be the best way to go. But he is drawing big bets. I think he could be a late round flyer. And then I do want to bring up, before we move on to veterans in new places, Spencer, one more rookie who I kind of have my eye on, and he'd be on my list of guys to target. And I'm curious to see what you think of him. Wandel Robinson, New York Giants.
Yeah, Juan Dale. Yeah, he's somewhat intriguing. I don't really trust that offense. I feel like Kadarius Toney's probably going to be the main receiving option over there, but he was very injury prone last year. So I feel like it's one of those things like, and if Toney's healthy, I don't see Robinson getting a whole lot. But if Toney would go down, then at that point, I think Robinson could end up being the focal point, because I definitely don't trust Kenny Golladay. Him and Daniel Jones have absolutely no chemistry. Like, it was,
and Golladay also
disgusting.
Prone,
yeah, it was just so brutal watching that last year. I couldn't believe it was a league where Kenny fell like really far. So I was like, yeah, I'll take a shot on him. He's talented. But I was like, man, what a waste of a pick. He is trash, man. That whole offense. But yeah, Juan Dale, he's intriguing. He'll probably start off as a gadget player. But yeah, if something would happen to Toney, he could work his way up the depth chart.
My only argument with that would be, and by the way, it's clear you really don't like Kenny Golladay. That was good.
No.
I mean, your feelings came out very strongly there.
I will never draft him ever again as long as he's on the Giants.
Never. Boy, he said never.
Never. Okay. I don't care. He was undrafted. 16th round, not touch. I'd rather take the kicker.
My one argument with Wandale would be, he does seem like a very similar player to Kadarius Toney, which to me would raise the question: why would the Giants use a second round pick on a guy like Wandale Robinson when they already have Kadarius Toney, unless they had a plan to somehow use both of them, or unless for some reason they had soured on Kadarius Toney in just 1 year. And so I think there will be some opportunities. I'm not saying you go out and take Wandale Robinson in the first rounds of your draft, but if I can get him in those last 6 rounds and can stash him on my bench and see what he is, I'm more than willing to take that gamble.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just like there's just a lot of those kind of options. There's like, the two Packers guys, and George Pickens, Sky Moore. Those are two I'm not as high on. Then, but Jalen Tolbert, like I said, Jalen Tolbert, I'm pretty high on there late. And then Alec Pierce with the Colts. So, I mean, yeah, I would say I'd definitely rather Wandale than some of those guys. But it's just, the Tolbert especially, that are, it's in that late round range that I prefer slightly. Because I feel like with Michael Gallup out early and James Washington out, Tolbert, and that's a high volume passing attack. Tolbert, could end up the most productive rookie wideout, especially if Jarvis and MT are absorbing a lot of the targets in New Orleans, and then Drake London would get hurt or something. Then there is a path for Tolbert to really be a value.
There's a path for Treylon Burks to be of value too, Spencer.
Hot take. Jalen Tolbert outproduces Treylon Burks as a rookie.
Let's shake on it, and we'll bet a root beer or something. Are you old enough to drink? I'm kidding. I know you are, but barely. Maybe we'll bet a real beer on it. Okay. Although that Cowboys versus Titans offense may not be a fair fight. I don't know. I'll have to think about that one.
We'll revisit it. We'll revisit it.
Yeah. Let's move on from the rookies and talk about some veterans, guys who are look, we all know they're productive fantasy players for the most part, and that they have been at times in the past. Question is, will they continue to be? So this is a look at familiar faces in new places. First of all, guys where you think they improved their situation, or where maybe the move is not as bad as some people are making it out to be. Guys you're willing to target. And Devonte Adams tops the list here, Spencer. I don't know that anybody can say he improved his situation, but you think maybe an overreaction to say, oh, I'm not touching him now that he's away from Aaron Rodgers.
Right, that's exactly what it is. I'm not saying he's gonna do better with the Raiders, but I definitely don't see his production falling off a cliff. I see him doing fairly similarly with the Raiders to what he did with Green Bay. I still have him penciled in as a top 5 wide receiver, and I ended up putting him in tier 1. With my tier rankings that I dropped last week, I was kind of torn on it, but I was like, what, this is Devonte Adams we're talking about here, and he's worked with Derek Carr before back in college. So I'm definitely not scared to draft Devonte up high. And the same thing with A.J. Brown. I don't see A.J. Brown going from the Titans to the Eagles is hurting him like some are thinking. If anything, it might help him because Tennessee they're both run-first offenses, but I think the Eagles might really try to open things up this year with Brown and Devontae Smith. I know Jalen Hurts isn't a great passer, but with a weapon like A.J. Brown, might be able to take that next step. And in Hollywood Brown, a huge improvement in his situation, going from the old school Ravens offense to the spread throw first Cardinals offense. And with DeAndre Hopkins suspended, his opportunity should be through the roof early on. And then same thing with A-Rob and Juju, much improved situations for those guys, leaving a couple of dormant passing attacks and going to two of the most explosive offenses in the league, and endanger us, man, getting out of Pete Carroll's crappy system and going to the Broncos with Nathaniel Hackett. Definitely see a resurgence coming for Russ.
All right. Yeah, anybody out of that Seahawks offense, I think, is good for a quarterback. We shall see. I've been of the opinion that Russ may be on the downslope of his career, but even so, he may be on the downslope, but if he's still close enough to the peak, guy can still be a QB1 in that offense. No doubt about that. Right, now some guys, and again, we're not saying don't ever draft these guys. Maybe just don't draft them, certainly not any higher than the experts recommend, but possibly lower. Tyreek Hill of now of the Dolphins, late of the Chiefs. He's really the poster child for this argument. Is he a special enough player to where he's going to produce as a WR1 with Tua Tagovailoa as his quarterback?
I think maybe as a back-end WR1, but not as the elite WR1 that he normally is. And I feel like now his stock's going back up again because of that training camp clip of him catching that deep ball from Tua. Now everyone's saying, oh, he's not gonna have a problem on the deep bomb. They showed it, but I was saying, like, that is one deep bomb, y'all. That's an overreaction.
They get to pick and choose what they show, guys. They do.
Yeah, they probably didn't show all the times he underthrew him, which I bet there was a lot of those. So I just feel like, and there's a difference. There's a difference between practice and game action. In practice, you get all day to throw. Or, in this, he's like, how the real NFL works. You got pass rushers after you and stuff. And Tua so far in his career, Tua has not shown an ability to really push the ball. It's going to be one of those things where Tyreek Hill is going to be very dependent on his yards after the catch. And as fast as he is, he's still super quick, but might not be quite as quick as he was early on in his career, to where if he's having to depend on that constantly, I just don't see him being what he once was. I'm not saying he's going to be a complete bust, but I am saying that I am not touching him in the second round like most people seem to still be comfortable doing. If he falls to me in the third, I'll be all right with it. I won't be thrilled, but I'm like, okay, this is Tyreek Hill. He's still good for 1,000 yards and probably 8 or 10 touchdowns. But this isn't the old Tyreek Hill where it was like, man, he was capable of any given week going off for like 150 and 3 tugs.
Yeah, and not to say that the Dolphins have a bad offense, but it's not the Chiefs. I mean, he's going to get more attention from defenses than anyone could afford to give him in Kansas City. When you
Yeah,
had to
doesn't have
worry about
Travis Kelsey. Yeah.
Travis Kelsey is a big deal. Um, and Patrick Mahomes could take off and run. Of course, Tua can do that too. Elsewhere on this list, speaking of the Chiefs, you talked about a couple of those Chiefs that you did like. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, however, on this list is somebody that you don't like, along with the Browns' new duo of Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper.
Right. Yeah, I'm staying away from MVS because I feel like there's just too many mouths to feed in Kansas City. I think Kelsey and Juju be somewhat consistent. Well, obviously Kelsey will be. Juju, I think out of the receivers will be the one you can trust. For you, MVS, Sky Moore, who else did they? Oh yeah, Mecole Hardman's still there. All those are gonna be. They're gonna 1 week one's gonna go off, the next week the other's gonna go off. It's just gonna be a nightmare for if you're in a best ball league, and that's not bad. But for most people that play, where you got to set your lineup each week, I'm definitely staying away from MVS. And the Browns, yeah, completely avoiding that situation. Even with Watson playing, I still don't like Amari Cooper. Even with Dak Prescott, very inconsistent on a weekly basis. And in Watson, I just don't want any part of it because the NFL is determined to give that he's going to get more than just a 6-game suspension. He might end up on that commissioner's exempt list or something. He might not play a down this season because that situation's far from resolved. So in single QB leagues, it's just not worth the risk.
How about in a super flex league, Spencer? When do you pull a trigger on a Deshaun Watson roll of the dice?
Yeah, I would say I probably wouldn't touch him till like the 9th or 10th rounds. Even then, I'd be a little nervous because it's like
Yeah, and he's going to be gone by then. I mean, that basically means you're not, because in a super flex
yeah,
league,
I
I
said I'm
think
not touching
someone will
him.
take a
Yeah,
chance. Yeah,
yeah,
someone will
I'm
take a
not
chance
touching
before
him.
that.
Yeah,
So that means you're out.
Yeah, as Jim would say, I'm not touching him with a 10-foot pole. I just feel like even if he plays the Browns, that's a historically run first offense, at least under Kevin Stefanski. And even with that, like it'll be his first year in the system. I don't see him putting up the kind of numbers he did in Houston.
Like I did with the rookies, a name that did not appear on your target or your avoid list. We see Carson Wentz here. I don't think anybody's drafting Carson Wentz unless they flip and have to in fantasy football. But what about Matt Ryan, who replaced Carson Wentz in Indianapolis? Does Matt Ryan still have enough in the tank to interest you as maybe a low-end QB1 or a high-end backup?
Yeah, he's more of a super flex target for me. I didn't really put him on there because I feel like, in single QB, he's just somebody I'm probably not touching. But if he's he's a QB2, if it's a league where you probably need a backup because some leagues where people are old school and they feel they have to have a backup. He's not bad in that role. And he's somebody I definitely feel better about him than Carson Wentz because I think in the Colts system working with Frank Reich, he could have somewhat of a resurgence over there to where Carson Wentz. I with the Commanders, I don't like that at all. I don't see that. I think the Commanders are the doormat of that division. Where the Colts, I mean, that's a solid team. I know they've had a lot of quarterback turnover ever since Andrew Luck retired, but I think Matt Ryan's a guy that kind of will settle in there and should be their guy the next year or two. And I think he's a Pittman, Alec Pierce, maybe Paris Campbell if he could ever stay healthy, and then course, the running game with JT to where they can't key in on him. Where Atlanta, it was always they'd key in on the pass game with Julio, where with the Colts, there should be a lot more opportunities there for him to, he's not going to go off because it's a run first offense, but he's gonna have his weeks, and I think he'll be fairly consistent.
Yeah. One thing I will say about Carson Wentz, we've rarely seen him in a situation where he's on a bad team. The Eagles, when he was there, were pretty good, and the same thing with the Colts. He was inconsistent. The teams were pretty good, and so maybe there's an opportunity there for him to get the garbage time fantasy points that he never had before. Because if they're down by 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, he's going to be throwing. Whereas in Indianapolis, that rarely happened. So I wouldn't draft him in a one quarterback league certainly, but I will say that is the hope if you Superflex league. Maybe he has because they're down 24-10 going to the fourth quarter, and he throws for a couple touchdowns in what ends up being a 31-24 loss.
Yeah, so the Commanders' defense isn't terrible though. That'd be my counterpoint to that. It's just like, I don't think he'll be in enough of those situations. He might be in them here and there, but I don't think he'll be in those enough to where like that's actually why I kind of like Davis Mills for the Texans in Superflex, because he's somebody that with their defense still being in shambles, like he's gonna have a lot of garbage time opportunities, and he held his own last year. They didn't bring in any outside competition. Like I think he's a sneaky good third quarterback who could even if you decide to punt your super flex spot till later, like he could even be a decent second.
Yeah, for sure. So that is our segment on rookies and familiar faces in new places. As mentioned, we will have a different fantasy football angle to preview each Tuesday leading up to the season. So 4 more of these bad boys. August the 16th and 23rd, the 30th, and then I guess on September the 6th, we'll be into game week, and we'll be talking more week 1 specific stuff. But we'll have more general previews. We'll go into some positions. We'll do some prop bets. We'll have more stuff for you down the line. And in the meantime, I want to wrap today up with a little bit of a look at fantasy baseball. As I mentioned at the top, 3, maybe 4 weeks left in most fantasy baseball regular seasons. The playoffs will begin around the beginning of September. So it's time to get those lineups in order. You got an injury. Yes. You've been waiting for Fernando Tatis Jr. to come back. He's finally heading out on rehab. Maybe he's back. Jacob deGrom's back. But Tim Anderson's out 4 to 6 weeks now. We just saw it today. Quite a few other guys. I mean, look, there's a new injury every day. That's the way it is in sports. And so if you are trying to get your lineups in order for the playoffs, either to make it or just to get them there for the postseason, we're here to help. Here are some waiver wire targets from Spencer, starting with position players.
Yep, yeah, Jose Miranda, man, with the Twins. He's been really killing it there at the corner infield spot, especially for those that need a third baseman. A lot of times third base is a thin position. So I feel like Miranda's somebody to keep riding the wave on him. It's a good lineup. Should see plenty of RBI opportunities, and he's been very solid. Jorge Mateo with the Orioles, somebody if he's a stolen base specialist. So if you need stolen bases, which I know a lot of y'all in roto leagues do, because there's just not many players that steal bases anymore. So Mateo's on to watch for that. And then MJ Melendez, I think I mentioned him last week for those that need a catcher, but he's still been hitting well. And he's a guy, he's also an outfielder, so he plays basically every day, which is rare for a catcher. So if you're dealing with the catcher blues, I know like a lot of y'all are, he did pick him up now, because I don't see him being available in leagues with savvy managers. And then Seth Brown, somebody that's he's been quietly productive. He's on a bad team. He's not anything like flashy, but it's just, hey, he's a solid, got some power, even a little bit of speed. I think he's got like 8 steals on the year. So even though the A's stink, I mean, he's somebody that could be a key piece to a playoff contender.
And by the way, the percentages you see here are their current ownership as of this morning in ESPN.com leagues. And so all of these guys available in at least 60% of those leagues, maybe a little bit different in a Yahoo or a CBS, depending on where you play. But typically they're pretty similar. Those guys all available between 60 and 90% of the time, depending on the depth of your league. Now some pitchers. Everybody always needs pitching help. It doesn't matter how good of pitching you have. You could always use another quality starter, another quality bullpen arm. One of these guys we told you about last week, and so you got to listen up to us because the Felix Bautista is the guy. He was owned in less than 10% of leagues last week. Well, the Orioles traded their closer, and he became the closer. I mean, he's been a shutdown guy, and now he's, that ownership creeping up. People are taking notice, so this might be your last chance for Bautista. How about these other guys?
Right. Yeah, same thing with Reed Detmers. I think we mentioned him too last week, and I actually picked him up in one of my leagues, my 12-team league, where it's kind of tough to find quality arms. And so, I'm glad I did, because you can never have too many quality arms. And sure enough, I had Tyreek Skubal go down. And so I was like, man, I'm short on starting pitching, but I got Reed Detmers now to where my rotation still looks pretty solid. And, he's young, but he's just seems like he's gotten better as the season's gone on. And then Jesus Luzardo, I feel like could be a league winner there at the Marlins. Man, it's a Pitchers Park there in Miami, and he's a guy that he missed a lot of time, but that's actually good for his end of season prospects, because I feel like, there won't be any. It's not like, oh, he's pushing 200 innings or so. I know he hadn't pitched a whole lot of innings this year, so I would think they'll just let him work in his usual amount of innings, even though he's a younger starter. And then for those that need saves, they have Bautista for sure, being that now he's the closer with the Orioles. And then Tanner Scott, another Marlin. The Marlins have been bad lately, but Scott's somebody that, he gets a lot of strikeouts for a closer. And if it's the Marlins, I feel like the Marlins will start winning a few games here and there. They're not as bad as they've been lately. They've got some talent over there. So once they get back on track, Scott should be able to rack up a good amount of saves and also get you some Ks to go with it.
No, I agree. The Marlins are the type of team, and I would keep this in mind for betting purposes as well. They just sort of feel like they're going to make that late season run and get within shouting distance of 500. And at the end of the year, everybody will say, well, they weren't that bad. And you'll forget that at the end of July, they were basically out of it already. Kind of like the Tigers last year were, and it was a little bit of fool's gold. We saw this year, the Tigers really weren't that got hot at the end of the year. That the Marlins could be that team this year. And so if you could ride that in fantasy, for sure. Spencer, I wanted to end today with a little story. I think this is instructive just because for me, it shows that fantasy sports and playing fantasy sports for the great majority of people should just be fun. And so I'm a Mariners fan, as you all know, and I have fallen in love with Julio Rodriguez. Right. And I think even people who aren't Mariners fans have fallen in love with Julio Rodriguez.
Yeah, he's out like the new Tatis.
Yeah. Like it's hard to look at that guy and not see the right-handed Ken Griffey Jr. Big, strong kid, plays center field, fast, has a beautiful swing. Obviously, he's righty instead of lefty, but it's hard not to feel the same way about him. Has fun playing the game. And so anyway, I have him in a league that has a 3-year, the year you drafted him plus 3 years keeper. And I drafted him probably higher than I should have because I was already in love with the guy before he'd ever played a major league inning. I was in Miami this year when he hit his first career home run. Got video of it, all that kind of stuff. So I have a very personal connection to the player, right? Well, because he's a keeper, you start in the trade deadlines in these leagues, you start getting offered these mega deals for keepers by guys who are out of the playoff chase. Hey, I'm out of the playoff chase. I'll trade you all my good. It's kind of like you see in real Major League Baseball, trading guys who are rentals for a good keeper. And Julio Rodriguez is about the best keeper you can have right now. As far as in our league, you can't keep guys who you drafted in the first 7 rounds. And so the very top players can't be kept. Julio Rodriguez was taken by me in the 8th round, and that's why I did it so I could keep him. Well, I was offered Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, Justin Verlander, and Aaron Nola for Julio Rodriguez.
Oh, come on.
And I had to think about it. You think about that. Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, Justin Verlander, and Aaron Nola.
How are like from the same? Those are all on the same team.
All on the same team.
That's unbelievable. How is that team not a contender?
Well, I think it was his. Yeah, I think it was his first 4 picks.
That is nuts.
And he's he's borderline contender, probably a few games out of the last playoff spot. Could have made a run, and basically instead came to me and said, "I will give you the 4 best players I've got for 3 years of Julio." And I had to think about it, but finally I was like, "Look, I just want to keep the guy. I want to root for him for 3 more years. I want him on my team. I think he's very, very good." But even having said that, it's hard to. I think I'm in 3rd place in that league, and so maybe that puts me over the top.
I think that would. For
yeah,
sure.
I already have traded a keeper to pick up Trey Turner. I have Fernando Tatis Jr. in that league. Traded him for Trey Turner. Also have Freddie Freeman, Max Scherzer, Jacob deGrom. I have a good team. And so you add those 4 guys to it and you say, well, you're the favorite to win this championship. And it's all about winning championships, right? Well, it is. But for me, it's also, I just want to have my favorite player on my team as long as I can. And so I eventually turned down, call me crazy. But for me, it is about, at a certain point, fantasy sports are about having fun and doing what you want to do with your team.
I got you. Actually, I kind of did the opposite of that recently. I call these business decisions. I made a business decision as far as I traded Paul Goldschmidt away. It pained me to do it, but it was a keeper league, and I was just like, man, this is the highest Paul Goldschmidt's value is going to be. I got to try to get something now while he's at his peak. And so I was able to turn him into Ty France, into Mookie Betts, and Ketel Marte. And it was
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'm kind of like it's bittersweet because like man, I really just traded Goldie away, but I was weak in the outfield and I was like, this is Mookie freaking Betts, man. This dude's like he's to be the best player in baseball for the next 5-10 years. Like he is just so productive, does it all, and he's in a great lineup. I just like I hated doing it, but I don't know. Man, I like to win. So I decided to pull the trigger.
Yeah. And I hear you. And if Julio Rodriguez was Paul's age and at that stage in his career, I'd be much more likely to say yes. Because by the end of 3 more years he could decline. Julio Rodriguez is going to be 24 years old in 3 years. He'll be just coming into his peak.
Right.
And so I get what you're saying, and I've made business decisions before, but in this particular case with this particular player, couldn't do it. So
yeah, I got you. Yeah, the context of being the keeper because you couldn't have kept any of those 4. I don't think with the way the league works. No. Okay, so you'd have been giving up your franchise cornerstone. So yeah, no, I can see why you didn't do it, especially if you have already a pretty stacked team. But it's one of those things like, man, you could have almost guaranteed yourself the ship for this year, but it would have probably cost you some down the road.
And that's where I think, could I have guaranteed it? It's a playoff league. So you get into the playoffs. Yeah. Those 4 guys have a bad week in September, or it's the end of September for championship week, and they're all out of the lineups because the Angels are out of contention and the Astros have clinched it, so they rest Verlander and all. Maybe it doesn't help me win a championship, and then I feel really bad. So I ultimately turned it down. But that's sort of where we're at with fantasy sports. I mean, you can make all the right moves, you put yourself in a good position, and then sometimes you just got to follow your gut and do what you want to do. So.
Yeah. I was surprised the dude took the deal. He had sent me. I'd sent him originally Goldie and Matt Carpenter for Mookie Betts, and he countered with Ty France and Goldie. But I was like, man, Ty France, that's a productive hitter. I don't really want to give him up. And then I was like, I could tell Marte, he's somebody that's like, he hadn't been that great this year, but he's somebody that he's productive and he steals some bases. I don't have a whole lot of stolen bases there. So I was like, you know what, I'll sacrifice the batting average and to get the steals. And I was surprised he took it, but he did. But I don't really regret it per se because and it's a keeper league, and I obviously much prefer Mookie Betts' long-term outlook than Paul Goldschmidt's.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And on a totally different note, to end the show here, talk just a little bit. There was a report today coming out. Just seeing this now, the New York Daily News reporting the Pelicans remain in acquiring Kevin Durant, who has remained trade demand from the Brooklyn Nets, not listed among the leaders. That would be interesting. So something to keep an eye on, and we will be back if that develops. We'll certainly talk about it Thursday on Bayou Bets. We'll be live with you on these same social media channels at 4:00, and we'll be back with a Fantasy Roundup next Tuesday at 2:00. Until then, Spencer the Guru Urquhart is there. I'm Zach Ewing. I'm here, and we're glad you're with us. We will talk to you Thursday for Bayou Bets and next Tuesday for the Fantasy Roundup. Thanks for watching, everybody.